see the movie Hook?
Oh yeah.
See that? You ever see that?
Oh, yeah. Robin Williams.
Right, Robin Williams. And, like, the Lost Boys don't remember Peter Pan. And then the little guy, I think his name was Patches or something, he goes up and he's, like, twisting his face around. He's going like this, and he goes, there you are, Peter. I wonder if Russell Wilson's going to have one of those games.
Welcome to Monkey Knife Fight, folks. I'm Connor Rowntree, and that's Joe Dolan, and we're talking a little Monday Night Football. But let's just take a deep breath. Thanksgiving. Joe, I experienced my first American Thanksgiving, and I went up at least 2 waist sizes.
Oh, I'm welcome. This is exactly what happens. And, unfortunately for me, I got my COVID booster shot here on Friday, and I was not able to work out this weekend because it whipped my butt. I still have a grapefruit underneath my right armpit from the shot, and I didn't have a reaction to the first two, but man, it was a pretty wild weekend in football. And even though we talk NFL, I think it was kind of more wild in college football with the Lincoln Riley news. I mean, that was because that's a guy who's been kind of discussed as a potential NFL candidate. Well, he's not going to the NFL anytime soon since he goes to USC. I mean, I just thought that was a wild move, something that has ramifications for the football world. So, kind of interesting that happened as well. Just a wild weekend of football. And I think Thanksgiving, though, is kind of the point where you reach the top of the roller coaster and then the drop's coming. Like it's hard and it's fast like the rest of the year at this point. So, we're in the teens, we're in the teens weeks, 5 weeks from 5 weeks from today, we don't even have a game. There's no Monday night game in week 18. So
yeah,
right. So
that sounded weird to say. Week 18, I flinched at that.
Yeah. I mean, it's 4 weeks from today, we have our last Monday night game. So we are on the downslope, guys.
Well, Joe, what would be one big takeaway from the weekend for a positive and one negative that you would say from the weekend?
Oh, from a positive standpoint, oh boy, that it's over. As somebody who just needed Lamar Jackson to be competent last night in multiple leagues, he was anything but. That was a really tough pill to swallow. We've got some injuries, Dalvin Cook and Deebo Samuel, that we're holding our breath on. So obviously there's going to be a lot of waiting that we've got to do on this weekend. So certainly Cam Newton gets benched. So it was a rough weekend for quarterback play, I think, in general.
Yeah, no, definitely not fun, especially for a guy that started Cam Newton and myself on one of my teams. So that'll definitely be my bad. And the good side of my Thanksgiving was the fact I celebrated Thanksgiving, traveled all over the States, and it was a good time, ate some great food and saw family and friends. And I think I'm coming back. Jason extended me an invite to head to his place for next year. So I might be heading down to, there it is.
Have fun with it, man. It's great. Oh, by the way, Deebo Samuel just tweeted out blessed, which is good. I like that because maybe he's not hurt seriously.
Yeah, it could hopefully not be a season ender after all, but it definitely didn't look good yesterday. Joe, we got Monday Night Football now. Seahawks, and they're taking on the football team in Washington, and two teams that are definitely, well, they're on different sides of the momentum spectrum, at least. I mean, last two games, Taylor Heinicke's looked pretty solid, 77.8 passing completion rate, and he's just kind of pulling it together. Washington's won 2 straight games since their bye week, and then on the other side, you got a Seattle Seahawks team that's 3-7, worst record since Pete Carroll took over. So it's definitely an interesting matchup. Maybe not intriguing, but interesting matchup come Monday night.
Yeah, it's let's just see. Can Washington keep it up? Can Seattle get back on track? And those are the two big questions here. Washington has been able to control the game, which has resulted in Antonio Gibson getting a ton of carries. And that's kind of limited the impact of J.D. McKissick. That's kind of limited the impact. Jarrett Patterson had been getting some work in the ground game before the bye. But Gibson also fumbled last week. What's the role here for Antonio Gibson is my question. Can Russell Wilson get back on track? I mean, he has been atrocious in their 2 games since the bye. DK Metcalf hasn't produced. Tyler Lockett's had a ton of opportunity, but really has not taken that opportunity and done much with it. That's the question, because if Seattle can get back on track, this is a much tougher game for Washington. If not, Washington could win this game 17-10, and I think Washington would be very content to do that.
Yeah, it kind of seems whoever loses this game can wave their playoff aspirations goodbye, and any team that wins it may have a chance. Maybe. Hope's dangerous, but there could be some hope. Russell Wilson, you see his line there, 240.5. And Taylor Heinicke at 235.5. As for Russell Wilson, I'm just going to have to take less on that from what I've seen from him from the last pair of weeks. As you've said, 0-2, a 51% completion rating, averaging 184 pass yards per game. I don't have much confidence, especially from a pass rush that is pretty decent on that football team. So I'm going to take less on Russell Wilson there, Joe.
The thing with Washington, I just don't get is they lose Chase Young and then all of a sudden their defense starts playing better. Now, they got Brady a couple weeks ago. Brady goes for, in that game against Tampa, Brady goes for 220. Okay, well, Brady's playing a lot better than Russell Wilson is right now. But they played Carolina last week, and Cam Newton goes for 189 and 2 touchdowns. Well, based on the way Cam Newton played yesterday, maybe that's a bad sign that Cam Newton went for 189 against this defense. I have a gut feeling, and this is not based in reality. I have a gut feeling Russell Wilson goes more than this, because the logic, all your logic is 100% true. He's not playing well. He's been awful. This offense has been broken. I just feel like Russell Wilson's going to be out. Yeah, you ever see the movie Hook? See that? You ever see that?
Oh, yeah. Robin Williams.
Right, Robin Williams. And, the Lost Boys don't remember Peter Pan. And then the little guy, I think his name was Patches or something. He goes up and he's twisting his face around. He's going like this, and he goes, there you are, Peter. I wonder if Russell Wilson's going to have one of those games tonight. A there you are, Peter game.
A there you are, Peter game.
Like one of those games that Russell Wilson's played games the last couple weeks here where I think a lot of teams that have draft capital and maybe a need for a quarterback have been like, I don't know if this is the guy I want to spend it on. Maybe Russell Wilson has a game on national television that says, wait a minute, I think you should probably consider trading for me. The relationship in Seattle might be over, but I've still got a lot of football left to play. I am not using logic at all. I'm using gut feeling on this. I say more for Russell Wilson.
Well, wouldn't that have been something, right? Looking back, let's just bounce this question off you, Joe. If you're Seattle management and you're looking back now at that supposed package that the Chicago Bears had offered in the offseason, now you're 3-7 with Russell Wilson. Do you go back and make that deal?
Probably not. I mean, look, the thing is, I don't want to give up on Justin Fields. That I think that's a stupid.
Well,
thing
that was
to do.
before. Yeah, no, this was all before the draft, right? I don't think the Bears.
Right. Well, so you have to compare it. No, you have to compare it to what they got with Fields, right? I mean, I don't know. Because I think they're getting an enema right now because Matt Nagy's going to get fired and Ryan Pace is going to get fired, and hopefully a new staff can come in there and work with Justin Fields. No, I probably wouldn't do it.
Well, Russell Wilson, folks, 35.1% completion percentage on third down this season. That's the worst since Chad Hutchinson in 2002 of the Dallas Cowboys. So if he can't move that ball on those later downs, it's going to be a tough night for him. I'm still riding with the Les Joe. I understand if you have that feeling, maybe
That's
it's a hey,
That's
Peter.
all it is. It's a feeling.
But I can't go against what I'm seeing on paper. And the fact he can't hook up with DK Metcalf for the life of him right now is just a scary thought to me. On the other side of the ball, though, Taylor Heinicke, we said it. He's playing some pretty good football as of late. And I think he does go for more on this. Washington, they've scored 27 plus points in each of their 2 games since the bye week. He's been pretty solid with a QB rating, averaged over 120 in those games. So I think if you're taking on a Seattle defense that hasn't been all great in the past game, that Colt McCoy put up 328 yards against.
Yeah.
And Heinicke's just more versed in his offense. Not that I don't know if Colt McCoy is necessarily tenfold better than Taylor Heinicke, but Heinicke's been taking those starter snaps this season since the injury to Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I think if it's pretty simple, if Colt McCoy can go for 328, I think Heinicke can get 235. And Scary Terry's playing some good football right now. Another 100-yard receiving game last week. So give me the more on Taylor Heinicke.
Could get Logan Thomas and Curtis Samuel back as well, which Curtis Samuel, remember him? I think that's a good sign here for Taylor Heinicke as well. I'll take the more as well.
Well, Joe, you're the fantasy points guy. That's what you do. Let's see if we can take a look at this contest in fantasy points now. Russell Wilson's fantasy line at 20.5. Now, Russell Wilson, he's not a guy that I want to count out on fantasy points. He can scramble. He can rush. He's going to fight. He is going to fight in this game. Heinicke's line is at 18.5, Joe. Where do you see those coming in from the fantasy point perspective? Let's start with Russell Wilson, because you sounded quite perplexed when we said that. There you see the lines there, 20.5 for Wilson, because he can tuck and go. And in a game where he needs to get going, his legs may be used just a tad more, dare I say.
Oh, God, this is, again, no logic. But, my analysis was just, I wonder if he's going to have a kind of an FU game. I'm going to have to say more. And I think all the logic points to less here, but I'm going to have to say more.
Yeah, I'm gonna ride with the logic train and take the less just based off of the last couple of weeks and what we've seen. But hey, you never know. If there's anyone that can be dangerous, it is danger Russell Wilson, rumbling for a 6-yard touchdown, throwing those touchdown passes. So 6 points if he scores one with his legs, 4 points every time he passes one. And as for Heinicke, yeah, he's been leading an offense that's averaging right around 30 points for the last 2 weeks. He's looked pretty solid. And if Colt McCoy can throw for 328, I think Heinicke can put up 19 fantasy points. So I'll take Heinicke, and mainly because of the way that Terry McLaurin's playing. Right, Terry McLaurin
Seattle's
is really
secondary is banged up too. I mean, totally. I'm taking the more here for Heinicke.
Yeah, there's not much more to say from either of us on that one, folks. Scroll down, hit your selections, and you're in to win. Now let's talk a little bit about the receivers on this Seattle team. I mean, DK Metcalf, I kind of alluded to it earlier. He has been him and Russell Wilson have just been on a different page. If he's catching the ball with one hand, makes a miraculous catch, he's out of bounds. The balls are going towards his feet. They just seem to be on a different page. 70 receiving yards, though. I guess for a guy in your position that feels like Russell Wilson's going to go off, you have to like that more, no?
I do. Look, that, and again, I'm just talking from the perspective of I just don't think I'm going to see Russell Wilson play 3 awful games in a row. And that's just all my life. That's just gut feeling. But like I said, the logic dictates you say less here, because if I'm looking at the way the Seattle Seahawks have played of late, and I'm looking at this line, I'm saying there's no way that this is a free square. You take the less. But this is why Vegas was built, right? Because things that look obvious sometimes aren't so.
Yeah, well, Vegas definitely wasn't built on winners, right in the middle of the desert there. And I'm going to have to take the less on DK Metcalf. Obviously, as I said, him and Russell Wilson just seem like they're on different pages. Going against you on that one, Joe. But Antonio Gibson, I believe it was 19 touches out of the backfield last week. You said it earlier in the show. They've just been feeding him the rock, and I think 68 yards, is attainable to the more here. So I'll take the more on Antonio Gibson. Joe, where do you see him falling tonight?
Hopefully less, because I really need him to go under 8 fantasy points in a PPR. Because I'm in a huge contest, so I'm going to take the less here and hope the good vibes roll here. I'm going to take the less. I really need him to go under this number.
Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. I have to take the more on that reception line. I know he had 5 receptions last week, so he did fall short. But as I said, he's really been the go-to guy in this offense. You did say that Thomas and who was it? Samuel maybe coming back?
Yeah,
Wow.
Curtis Samuel.
When was the last time Curtis Samuel played this?
I don't even know.
Week 2?
Let me see. Curtis
Week
Samuel. Week 5.
There you
He
go.
hasn't caught a pass since week 4.
Oh, there. That's why. Okay.
And that's the only game he caught a pass in. So he has 4 catches this year.
Nice. Invisible. Absolutely invisible out there. Yeah. Scary Terry. He's the go-to guy in that offense. I like the more than 5.5 receptions. And then Ty Lockett. I mean, who's it going to be? It's going to be Metcalf. It's going to be Lockett. 5 receptions. I actually think Lockett can get more than that. I think that Russell Wilson, I think he's having problems stretching the ball down the field, but I think Ty Lockett is kind of one of those guys that he has trust with. They've done some pretty great things together, and he's a playmaker once you get that ball into his hands. So some short screen passes, maybe wide receiver screens, maybe dump passes, or just quick slants over the middle, and that's the key to the game right there. So I'll take the more. I'll
take less on this. He has 6 catches over the last 2 games. I think, he can even make an impact down the field. He had 4 catches for 115 last week. And I think he can do that. And Russell Wilson can still hit all the metrics that I'm expecting him to hit in this game with Tyler Lockett going less than this number. Yeah. Well, we're going against each other basically across the board today. And that always makes for some fun football.
For sure. And if we look at it from a fantasy point perspective now, if you could pull up the big fantasy pool, who do you expect to be that standout receiver then for the Seahawks? You have Metcalf, obviously.
I'll take Metcalf today.
He's the he's the number 1 guy, but the big play shot has definitely been Lockett, right? There's no denying that. Why do you think Metcalf comes out on top of Tyler Lockett's performance today, and why would you take the more than the 16.5 points?
Squeaky wheel narrative. DK Metcalf hasn't been getting it done. He's been pissed off. Got ejected from a couple of games ago. I think the squeaky wheel narrative is why DK Metcalf. He was open in the end zone for a couple of touchdowns last week, and Russell Wilson sailed the ball. I think DK Metcalf gets in the box in this game.
Tyler Lockett on that 15.5 points. Do you think he can eclipse that, or do you think he goes less than that as well?
I'll have to go less, but I think he can eclipse that. I have a really tough time with that 15.5, quite frankly.
Yeah, he's such a valued deep shot. The question is then, can Wilson hit that deep shot? Can Wilson extend the ball downfield? Because, he overthrew balls last week. He underthrew balls actually the last couple weeks. So it will definitely be interesting. And now, Joe Dolan, we put you on the hot seat here. How do you see this game playing out? What's your projected game script for Monday Night Football?
I think the Seahawks are going to come out, and I think the Seahawks are going to look good offensively. Russell Wilson will look good offensively. And I think that's going to put Washington a little bit behind the script, and we might see a little bit more J.D. McKissick than we've seen in recent weeks.
Yeah, so if I had to ask you a final prediction for the scoreboard, what would that be?
Seattle 24, Washington 20.
Yeah, so you're riding with the Seahawks, folks. I'm gonna take the momentum. I think momentum's on the side of Washington. They're at home. Juan Rivera, emotional guy, obviously, former linebacker with the Chicago Bears, and I don't know. I think they got something good going on. And when I see Colt McCoy passing for 328, that's tough for me. That's really tough for me to get behind Seattle, no matter how much faith I have that Russell Wilson could come back. He isn't playing his best, and I have to give the defensive edge to Washington, and that's why I have to lean towards the football team because of the prowess on defense. But hey, we'll reconvene next Monday, Joe, and talk again. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and thanks for joining us. And one last thing before we go, if there's anything that I should try for my next Thanksgiving experience, what would you recommend?
Macaroni and cheese. Oh, did you have any this time?
No.
Macaroni and cheese is Thanksgiving.
They don't do that on the West Coast, and they also don't do it in the Northeast. It's a travesty, and it should exist.
Yeah, well, I live in the South now,
right?
And they do it in the South, and I did it when I lived in the Northeast because I love macaroni and cheese. So,
there it is. Well, if you like the mac and cheese, then you like the mac and cheese. No, I did have cornbread though, so that was a little Southern touch out in Los Angeles. That was nice. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in to our breakdown of Monday Night Football here on Monkey Knife Fight. I'm Connor Rowntree. That's Joe Dolan. And remember to hit it hard.